Alexis Nasard, welcome to the Executive Talk. You were once asked who you think is a very good executive. And to my surprise, you said Lady Gaga, which is quite unusual. Why did you say that?
Listen, at every point in time, you have different kind of personalities that inspire you. At that point in time, I was quite inspired. She was very colorful. She made a huge name for herself. And she spent a huge amount of energy on philanthropy, on helping younger people, on disabled people. So she really made a difference in her society. Because, you know, a young lady like this, you know, coming from a fairly humble background, facing a huge success all of a sudden, and keep it all to herself would have been an easy temptation.
Do you see any parallels? I don't mean, you know, like on a cultural level or singing or anything, but do you feel a little bit, you know, the same forces of nature pushing you as well as an entrepreneur, as a businessman?
You know, that would be pretentious for me to compare myself with with Lady Gaga, for sure. I don't have the charm of her looks, that's for sure. I wouldn't say that. I would say that for me, what's really important in anything that you do that is meaningful to society, not only for the P&L, not only for stakeholders, but society really by and large. Are you a force for good as a company? And I'm pleased to say that, you know, one of the values of the company that I manage is really, you know, making a difference in society and improving consumers' life. And that is something I strongly believe in. And sometimes, you know, we all at work have a bad day or a difficult day. And when you remember that you are a force for good, it always uplifts everybody.
Bata has that reputation, and as you say, it's got a long history of, for example, treating their employees very well. Mm-hmm. There's been stories of, you know, that Bata employees had their own houses, their own mm-hmm. apartments. When you changed company, I mean, mm-hmm. you've been here for 2 years, more or less, 2.5 years. Was that something that was important to you as well? Kind of a trigger as well that you say this company suits, you know, my values as well?
It's very important. I think the value match is extremely important in any environment, not only for the business relationship to work, because otherwise the cost of transactions becomes very difficult because everything becomes a big emotional burden. If you are in an environment that you don't respect, or an environment whose values you don't match yours, or an environment where you actually don't like the people, life becomes, you know, difficult and miserable, and life is too short. So I think it enhances and it improves business transactions, also improves your quality of life. So yes, it is important. And that is something I did look at. And that is something I have always looked at. It's really important. I advise anybody to look at this dimension because it's going to guide the bulk of your happiness at work.
So in that regard, the company you're working for has to match, at least to a certain degree, to a certain amount, the values you have, you know, as a person.
Yes, and also absolutely, and also the nature also of the industry, right? You know, I don't want to get into details, but I've been confronted also with opportunities which were very much about short-term gains, about transactions, about exiting, about maximizing values, which has its own merit.
Well, you would have made more money.
But I'm a person who likes to build. I'm a builder by nature. And that is important to me. That is why I like brands, because brands transcend lifetimes. Brands never die, right? I mean, you can always revive a brand that died 50, 60, 70 years ago. We see that every year. And you build brands for the long term. That's the beauty about it.
However, you are in the process of reviving that brand, Bata, who's been along for a long time, yes, but who's had its, you know, ups and downs as well. When you started, you were highly ambitious. I mean, you said, I think, revenue plus 50%, profit plus 100% within 5 years. To give out goals like that, you put yourself under extreme pressure. Why do you do that?
You know, there are different ways you manage your objectives, right? I mean, it is really important that people in an organization and stakeholders be excited by what you're after. Is that an exciting picture of the future? Do I want to give the extra mile to achieve something that actually makes a difference? And I'm pleased to say that we're actually in good progress towards many of the targets that we outlined back in 2016.
So will you meet them?
And we can only do that. I can't get into specifics, but we can only do that once the entire organization and the entire people ecosystem is actually rallying behind it. Mm-hmm. And that is why it's important to declare it. That's, you know, one of the things. I'm very public, if you like, as a leader. I'm not perfect by any measure, but I'm very public. People know what I think and where I stand for. And there is no confusion in that case when you interact with people in the organization or even external to the organization. You don't have time spent in useless transactions. What do you mean? What do I mean? Are we aligned? Are we not aligned? When things are clear, you focus your energy on making it happen as opposed to defining what it is.
Where did you learn that, or did you have to learn that, or were you always that way, or is that a kind of almost a way you had to go as a manager to arrive at the point where you say, I'm transparent, I'm going to say what I want, and I'm going to be as open-minded and as hands-on as possible, that my people know what I want?
You have to, in these instances, it's a very good question, by the way. In these instances, what you need to do is you have to learn from experiences and you have to know yourself. Because any style of leadership that you follow and you adopt need to be in tune with your personality, right? I'm a fairly extroverted person. So for me, communication comes relatively easily. I'm not a genius. I'm just like that. So communication comes easily and I try to use it as a strength. I'm good with words. And I use, rallying, colorful words because people remember them. So it's my way to lead. Is it the best way in the world? I can't say that, but it works for me.
Is it a Mediterranean way to lead? You're Lebanese.
Yes.
They are known as very outgoing.
Yeah.
Very kind of charismatic people. Mm-hmm. They like to speak, just like you. Would you say, in that regard, you're a typical Lebanese?
I wouldn't say I'm a typical Lebanese. There are many aspects where I am Lebanese, and there are many aspects where I am not Lebanese. Remember that I left quite a while ago. But culturally, I have lots of aspects which actually are Lebanese. Would I say that it's a typical trait? I mean, people there are more extroverted than average, but my extroversion is quite policed. It's very intentional, if you like, when I put it in a business context. It is not purely spontaneous. I mean, there is authenticity, obviously, it's not fake. But you have to police it and you have to be very consistent. As the Romans said, repetita juvent. And I really believe in that. When you have a big theme, big focus area, you've got to keep repeating it in a very clear way with colorful language, because colorful language, a large organization like ours, 35,000 people, will remember it. Convoluted business statements, nobody remembers. They stay confined to the top 1% of the organization. And in the end, the first contact with the consumer is not the executive committee of the company. It is our sales associates. It is our people on the ground. It is these kind of people who confront our brands all the time. So that's important. That's why it's really important that deployment of an agenda be done in a very broad scale way and as public as possible.
Just to say 1 second with the cultural differences maybe as well. You said it yourself. You've been in Switzerland for a long time already. But
yes.
But you were born in the 60s in Lebanon. You grew up in Lebanon.
It doesn't make me feel very young. Born in the 60s.
Sorry. End 60s. Has to be
I'm just
said.
thinking about Woodstock now.
But you grew up. Let's put it that way. You grew up through the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
And we all know Lebanon.
Thank you for the correction.
Lebanon in the 70s or 80s. I mean, it used to be the Switzerland of the Middle East, but those were harsh times.
Yes.
Did that influence you in a way as well? That growing up in a country which was war-struck and which had its very harsh times, did that teach you something for being a businessman or being an executive?
Yes, a lot actually. The one interesting, actually my family's business did go bankrupt also during that period. So it was quite a daunting time for me personally. You learn a lot when you go through something that resembles a civil war. You learn a lot about human nature. Society kind of equalizes us because we're all bound with norms and rules that we can't abide. But you see that in reality, human nature is mostly composed of angels and demons, but they don't show up in a normal society. But they do show up in situations where the lid is taken away from society. Anyway, to go back to the business part, first thing I learned is that I can't take anything for granted. Because when you live in such an environment, anything can fall apart around you at any point in time. You can't take anything for granted. Even the currency you're paid in can disappear. And it did disappear from one day to the other. That was a period of time where, you always had to be very conscious, where is my wallet and my passport? It was very top of mind, and I still have it today. despite that it's been a long time ago, any point in time, said, where's my wallet, where's my passport? Because whenever you know you have to run or to change or to jump onto something, these two things always need to be with you. And I'm teaching it to my kids, and then they say, Dad, why are you so obsessed about the wallet and the passport? I said, don't worry about it. Your wallet and your passport.
When you say that, I mean, you've been all over the world. You've worked in a lot of countries. From Russia, US, now Switzerland. Is that something that the Swiss often underestimate, or they're not really aware of the luxury they live in? That being in Switzerland, being in a safe haven like this, is probably a gift that not many people have.
Oh, absolutely agree with you. Many Swiss don't even realize what a statistical outlier Switzerland is in terms of quality of life and human development. No unemployment. People with no diplomas making 8, 9, 10,000 Swiss francs per month. Where do you see that in the world? Incredible. One of the most egalitarian societies you have. The Gini index is incredible in Switzerland. It's like number 2 or number 3 in the world. So no, I don't think most Swiss realize the bliss that they live in. And sometimes, and I have many friends that when they complain about things, I said, okay, you can complain a little bit, but keep it in perspective. You're not in a bad place.
And you're complaining at a high level. You're obviously a Swiss fan, and you're a fan of your brand. And Bata, a lot of people consider it Swiss. I mean, it was born in a different country, but it is a Swiss company now. How much Swissness is in Bata? Or if I ask the other way around, shouldn't you promote Bata more as a Swiss brand, more as a premium Swiss brand in the market right now?
Bata is actually remarkably global. A lot more
global. You're in 70 countries, right?
Yeah, no, but remarkable. No, I tell you, it's more than footprint. It's also culturally global. When you join, you don't expect that, because the perception from consumers is, in Italy it's Italian, in Chile it's Chilean, in India it's Indian. But when you penetrate the company and you start meeting executives, shareholders, it's really, really global without a cultural skew. I mean, even when I was at Heineken, which is really a global company, it did have a Dutch skew because of its origin. Bata does not have a cultural skew. It's remarkable.
That an advantage or a disadvantage?
I think it's an advantage. And you can make it even a bigger advantage. We are truly global in every sense. When I think about my executive committee, I have Indian, I have French, I have Swiss, I have Italian, I mean, you have Lebanese. You have a big mix of people. And the mix also, interestingly, amongst our employees, between emerging markets and developed markets nationalities is almost 100% in line with our business footprint, which is great, which is a true tribute to diversity.
Don't you have a reputation problem that Bata wasn't considered and still isn't considered as, it's not a cool brand, if you allow me saying so?
Yeah, no, I allow you. I read reports as well, don't worry.
Okay, so how do you change
it's
that?
It's not exactly breaking news.
All right, so I'm not surprising you with that. So, do you want to change it? Because, you could say it's a very comfortable niche we're in. We don't have to compete with the more luxurious and let's say more sexy brands. Do you even want to change it? And if yes, how do you do that?
We don't want to be in a comfortable niche, but we want to sell comfortable shoes.
It almost sounds like a claim.
Yeah, I jumped on it, I had to. We have a coolness deficit. We recognize it. Because for a long time, we played it rather safe in our store concepts, in our shoe collections. We had decent results. But in a business which is so discretionary, as fashion, as footwear, you can't be in tune with the trends and with consumer psyche. You always have to be one step ahead. Every once in a while, you have to kick the consumer a little bit so you can stay relevant. Because the respect people have for our brand is extremely high. The trust they have in it is extremely high. And the awareness is huge. In most of our countries, we are more than 90% unprompted awareness, so it's very high. Our relevance, though, is not as good because we haven't shaken the consumer enough for a long time. What we want to do today is to keep the trust and the affection people have for our brand, but create a little bit more cha-cha-cha to the brand so we can stay relevant and top of mind. How do we do that? First is by creating collections that inspire more. I mean, today, you're going to look at some of our shoes, much more in athleisure area. Also, within the brown classic shoes, you can see more stylish designs. I mean, when you see what I'm wearing, you can like it or not, but we're trying to make an effort in terms of styling, in terms of finishing. And we're starting to see early signs that consumers are appreciating it. Our collection success rate moved very significantly. Today it's 85%, which is quite a big jump in terms of acceptance rate of our shoe collection. Because we have to remember, first and foremost, our business is selling shoes.
When you talk about that cha-cha-cha factor,
Yes.
How much is that you? Because you came in 2.5 years ago, as we said. You're known as a very dynamic. Already before you moved into the shoe industry, you said in an interview, I like nice shoes. I have a shoe collection. I like watches. I like fashion. So in a way, you almost personify that cha-cha-cha factor. Is that what you want to bring across as well to the team?
It is to an extent that way, but it shouldn't stay that way. For me, the tribute of leadership is building organizations which are there to last and that outlast you. For me, I would have done a good job if in 10, 15 years from now, somebody says, Alexis Nasard brought the company to the next level, and it stayed that way and it kept improving. I really believe in standing on the shoulders of giants, not just having a good stint and move on to the next thing. So if it is that way to a certain extent today, I'm working very hard that it does not stay that way and that spirit really gets institutionalized in the company, because a big job of a CEO is institutionalizing strategy and capabilities that transcend them personally.
That might stay as a legacy once you're not here anymore.
Exactly.
Speaking of that, and you talked a little bit about about your core values and how you see yourself. Being transparent is one thing. If I listen around and I talk to people, they all said Alexis Nasard he's got his principles. However, he doesn't like structures too much, so he doesn't. He's quite informal. Apparently, you don't like to be mistered, so you don't need all these formalities. How do you keep that balance? That being straight as a leader, really give goals and give orders. On the other hand, being quite informal, isn't that quite a big split?
It's one of my paradoxes, because I'm a very disciplined, extremely disciplined person, right? I don't do almost nothing randomly. Everything falls within an activity system, which is very, very deliberate. And
for example, you have your specific meal times, you have your specific
absolutely
daily routines. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Even I have my weekend windows where if you work, I even have a hierarchy of priorities. I'm quite an organized person, which helps me get more done, if you like. So I'm very disciplined as a person, but I'm not formal, right? When I run my executive committee, we have a very clear agenda, which is very well minuted and which is followed through every time systematically by people who are dedicated to do this work. But for me, that has nothing to do with being formal or informal. Personally, I'm not formal. I like to have a laugh. I like to talk to people on a first name basis. Leadership is not about, hiding behind big titles and big walls. That's not what leadership about. And that's not at all what my belief is. So that is why I spend a lot of time internally saying, just stop calling me Mr. I am Alexis. It's good enough. You know what I need you to do, and that's enough.
But
we can have a beer together, and we can have a joke together.
But having a beer with someone, you might work with someone who knows the boundaries and knows that I still have to kind of deliver.
Yeah.
But isn't it difficult sometimes to kind of change the switch and say, look, now I'm your boss. I'm just Alexis.
It comes to me quite naturally because it's my personality. I am like that. It's not a huge effort. I've always been like that. So. As you say, I'm born in the 60s, so I have a time to hone, if you like, the asperities of my personality.
And when we go back to that time, I read somewhere your wish as a child was to be a captain. Now, of course, you are a captain of a ship, of a big ship, of the Bata ship. Is that what you always wanted? If you look back at to that young boy back then, what would you say about you now? Is it really like, wow, you've gone a long way?
I was very lucky with my career. I've worked for 17 years for Procter & Gamble, which is an outstanding institution. At the time when I was at P&G, it was the Navy SEALs of the corporate world. We were unbeatable, and the talent that got out of P&G most of the time was unbeatable. Then I moved to Heineken, which is a fantastic company, which is cool, which is very innovative, which is very creative, which is very informal as well, remarkably for its size. And then I moved to Bata, which is a formidable institution with particularly the values that it has and the service it renders society. So I've been very privileged, and I had the opportunity to be a captain at different points in my career. Yes, I'm very grateful to that.
How long does a captain steer its ship? You're very young still, let's put it that way.
Extremely young.
Do you see yourself doing that until you're 65, 70, 75? Because it is a demanding job, and it is a stressful job as well. How do you see your next 20, 30 years?
You know, I'm not prone to stress as a person. I take stress quite well. I absorb it quite easily. So that even when I was a kid, I never was very, very prone to stress. The answer is, I don't know. I know that I have a lot of energy and still, I think, quite a bit of mileage. And, we see how life goes. But I'm fully energetic, and I'm fully motivated and driven by what I do.
You haven't been that long in Bata, and Bata has got, as we said, that tradition, and I think it's even in the Guinness Book of Records that no other company has sold as many shoes as Bata. You've been around for more than 100 years. Is there something you can give that brand? That is specifically you, that you say in 10 years that brand will have my kind of personal stamp on it.
There's a lot to be done. The beauty with this brand, whether you're talking about the shoe brand or the retail banner brand or the Bata.com brand, which is increasingly becoming extremely relevant and an important point of contact for our consumers, I think there's a lot to be done with it. That's the beauty with brands. Brands, if you think about brands, is like a canvas of oil painting that never dries. You are permanently painting and redoing and evolving, erasing a little bit, adding a bit of shade. I paint in my pastime, so it's an easy reference for me. So it's ongoing work. I think the one thing that is really essential for us is to really elevate our shoe product offering, because in the end, that is the contract of trust that we have with our consumers. Then to brush up a little bit the image of the brand, building on its current strength, so people can trade in, trade up, and trade across in our stores or in Bata.com, which in the end will get the wheel of our business machine turning in a sustainable way.
I just learned that you paint. I've never read that somewhere. If you paint, what is it? Is it naturalistic? Is it more realistic, or are you a dreamer in paintings as well?
I have phases.
Go anywhere.
I have phases. So every 3-4 years, I have phases. Now I'm very much into a very modernistic phase. So, and contrary to how I manage business, I'm completely spontaneous when it gets to painting. I just take my brushes and I see where it takes me.
So it's almost a release valve for you. That
yes.
What you can't do in business, you can do on a whiteboard.
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Coming back to the very first question, Lady Gaga was one of your, one of the CEOs that you would say she does a good job. That was back then. If you had one person, one CEO, one executive that you would say he or she is doing a hell of a job.
It's a difficult question. I can tell you a few people I look at very closely nowadays in terms of leadership and how they manage their constituencies and their agenda. Okay, I look very closely at Pope Francis. I mean, who's probably today, he had a great start as a pope, but who today is actually probably going through one of his roughest patches. And I'm really learning and avidly studying how he is navigating these waters.
Also as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. The Pope is one of the essential leaders, regardless of your religious beliefs. I'm also quite interested in the persona of Emmanuel Macron from France, who is actually today, one of the bastions of a globalistic view of the world, of a good balance between, social democracy as well as a good dose of capitalism to keep the economy dynamic, to keep providing opportunities for everybody with a good dose of fairness. I look at him quite closely because he's actually against the tide, where you see all these populism waves, these waves of intolerance, of provincialism, which are creeping up all over the developed world today. And I've been quite, admiring of how he's managed his first chunk as a leader today, and I'm avidly learning how he's going to move to the next phase, because it's not easy and things aren't getting easier.
We heard 3 names now. Final question: What are you most, Lady Gaga, Pope Francis, or Emmanuel Macron?
A mix of the three.
Alexis Nasard.